Alrighty. I think a good group has trickled in here. Thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday evening. My name is Gabe Friedman. I'm Director of Editorial Experiences at 70 Faces Media. And I'm a longtime colleague of Andy Silow-Carroll, who, if you don't know, put together this incredible Jewish humor course that this event is tied to. And he's going to give you presentation tonight that sort of feels like an episode of his six-part course. But the extra special thing is that we have the amazing comedian Modi here, who I'm sure many of you know because we featured him prominently in the sign-up and everything. He's incredible, and I think safe to say one of the comics who infuses Jewishness into his humor more than most. So we're going to hear from him in a little bit. Just logistics. Andy's going to give a bit of like a mini, like I said, a mini version of one of his course episodes. Then Modi's going to jump in for a Q&A portion. And hopefully we'll have 10 or so minutes at the end for some questions. So if you have questions for either Andy or Modi, you can put them in the chat. As always, be civil and let's be reasonable and courteous with the questions. Let's see, any other housekeeping before I introduce Andy? Well, of course, if you enjoy, I'll mention this again at the end, but if you enjoy what you see and hear tonight, there is an entire six-part course called Inside Jokes, Explore the Essence of Jewish Humor, under the guise of My Jewish Learning. And it's amazing. It's so fun and thought-provoking. And I'll put the sign-up link again in the chat a couple of times throughout tonight. You can email us if you have any questions or issues signing up, anything like that. So I know Andy's packed agenda here, so let's get to it. Andy Silow-Carroll is a longtime, extremely respected Jewish journalist and columnist who's now editor-at-large of the New York Jewish Week and managing editor for ideas at the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. Lucky for us and for all of his colleagues, as I learned very early on working with him at the JTA, he also happens to be extremely funny and a real learned student of Jewish comedic history. He's taught classes on Jewish humor for the Melton School of Adult Jewish Learning. He's hosted JTA's YouTube series Shtick Jewish Jokes Explained. And once he came in third at a Funniest Jew in New York stand-up comedy contest, which, as he points out, is much funnier than coming in first place. And I agree. So, Andy, I'm going to spotlight you and take it away.
Thanks so much, Gabe. Yeah, I came in third, but yeah, that is funnier than coming in first, although really not as satisfying. Welcome to a taste of my six-part course on Jewish humor, brought to you by My Jewish Learning. Now, if you took the course and you've come back for more, you're not only gluttons for punishment, but you're going to get some fresh material. So there's that. And if this is your first taste, this is just a little bit of a Vorspeise if you're interested in taking the full course. What we try to do in each lesson is to understand why Jews joke the way they do. What does Jewish humor say about their obsessions, their anxieties, their history, their neuroses? I like to think of Jewish jokes as a text, like the Bible or the Talmud, and that the deeper you go into the text, the deeper you get into the Jewish psyche. We can read a joke as what they call midrash, which is commentary, on what it means to be Jewish in all its variety. So today, and that's why I'm thrilled to have with us Modi, because he's going to stand at the nexus of what I'm going to talk about next. I'm going to focus on something I discuss in the course, although for our alumni, there's going to be some fresh material. I want to talk about the difference between Judaism, and Yiddish kite, right? It's an important distinction because it differentiates in many ways two major schools of Jewish humor. So now Yiddish kite refers to the ethnic dimension of being Jewish, right? Especially Eastern European. I don't have much to say about Sephardic humor. I'm sure it exists. Maybe that's the next course. But in Ashkenazi Eastern European Jewish humor, ethnic humor is heard in a style of joking that includes stuff like jokes about cheapskates, big spenders, big eaters, wily business
Oh, Andy, you cut out there. Hmm.
Jews
Hang
and
with
Gentiles, all
hang with
subjects of the
us.
course.
Andy, we lost you for a second there. Um, you
Where'd
were
you lose me?
go you were going through types of jokes. You said Ashkenazi humor has
Yeah, yeah.
big spender.
Yeah, let me know next time. So yeah, big spenders, wily businessmen, frigid wives, deli food, the nouveau riche, matchmakers, Jews who outwit Semites, the cultural difference between Jews and Gentiles. These are all subjects of the course and all aspects of ethnic Yiddishkeit humor. Now, Judaism refers to religious practice and identity, right? These include jokes based on the religious ritual, insider Jewish knowledge, holy texts, behaviors of religious people, and Hebrew or Yiddish literacy, right? See the difference? One is ethnic, one is religious. So I'm going to give you two examples. Here's a classic ethnic Jewish joke. Okay, here we go. Three Jewish mothers are sitting on a bench arguing over which one's son loves her the most. So the first one says, my son sends me flowers every week. You call that love, says the second mother. My son calls me every day. That's nothing, says the third woman. My son is in therapy 5 days a week, and the whole time he talks about me. Okay, now, why is that joke ethnic? Well, you don't need any religious or insider knowledge to understand what's going on. It's a joke about the Jewish mother stereotype, my son, the doctor, the whole bit. It's also a joke about therapy. And during the 20th century, Jews and therapy went together like, bagels and lox. Just as Jews were overrepresented in the psychiatric profession, ethnic Jewish comedians were overrepresented in comedy. That's Yiddishkeit, secular Jewish behaviors that aren't religious. Now, I'll give you a classic Judaism or religious joke. So a guy named Mandel, he's a bank accountant, he's a rich man, comes to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, I want to become a Cohen. Rabbi says, a Cohen, Mr. Mandel, with all due respect, I can't make you a Cohen. It doesn't work that way. I know you'd give me a hard time, but Rabbi, I'm prepared to pay for a new classroom to the Hebrew school. Rabbi says, that's very generous of you, but it doesn't work that way. I can't make you a Cohen. Rabbi, you drive a hard bargain, he says. If you make me a Cohen, I'm prepared to pay the salary of 3 new teachers. Mr. Mandel, you don't understand. No, Rabbi, this is my final offer. If you make me a Cohen, I'll add a whole new wing to the Hebrew school. Now, because of his dedication to Jewish education, the rabbi agrees. They give him the dinner. He gives the money. They have a dinner. He gives him the certificate saying he's a Cohen. And he gets alone with Mr. Mandel. He says, Mr. Mandel, I got to ask you, this is such a generous gift, but I'm curious. Why is it so important for you to become a Cohen? Well, Rabbi, he says, it's like this. My father was a Cohen. My grandfather was a Cohen. Now that's the punchline. If you're laughing, it's because you know that a Cohen is a descendant of the priestly class of ancient Israel. And that to be considered a Cohen, all you have to do is be the son of another Cohen. The joke tests the Jewish literacy of its audience. If you don't know this detail of Jewish law, you're not going to get it, which is ironic because it's a joke about an ignoramus who doesn't understand Jewish law. His Yiddishkeit is strong, and his Judaism, not so much. So now I want to show you a few clips that explore the differences between Yiddishkeit and Judaism in new ways. Not all fit neatly into the two categories, although most, I should say, are joking about things in ways you may not have heard in the Catskills during the golden age of what we call Yiddishkeit. So I want to start with Alex Edelman. Alex was born in 1989, and he has a bit of background that makes him very different than other comedians of a different era. He went to Jewish day school. He identifies as a modern Orthodox Jew. He had a one-man show called Just for Us about his encounter with a group of white supremacists in Queens. And when it moved to Broadway, it won a special Tony. So in this clip, I'm going to set up, you have to know that when Alex and his brother were little, they attended yeshiva or Jewish day school. So Gabe, you can play the clip.
You can see my screen, right, Andy?
I can see your screen.
Okay.
I'm from Boston. Yeah, I'm from this really racist part of Boston called Boston. And I'm an Orthodox Jew. Yeah. I've never had bacon. I'm that kind of Jew. I've never tried bacon. I've tried cocaine, but I've never tried bacon. That's the life I've had. My real name isn't Alex Edelman. My real name, get ready, is David Yosef Shimon ben Elazar Ruvain Halevi, Alex Edelman. I go by Alex, because it's all I can remember. And like, I get a lot of crap for not going by my real name. Like, my family gives me a lot of shit for it. They're like, why don't you go by your real name? Huh? You're not proud of your real name? And I'm like, no. My dad's name is Elazar. He'll be like, why don't you go by your real name? And I'm like, I don't know Elazar because it sounds like we're all in Slytherin. That's why. I have cousins, Menachem and Yitzchak. You can't even spell their names in English because there's no English letter for phlegm. I have a twin brother as well. I have a twin brother, AJ.
There if you can. So that's Alex Edelman, joking about his Hebrew name, being an Orthodox Jew. He has many other, he goes a lot into his background in his show and his routine. And when he does it, and this is something I want to talk about with Modi, he has to kind of negotiate who in the room understands his references and who doesn't. His otherness as a practicing Jew is part of his humor. And even the show is about his encounters with white supremacists, where it's important for him to be seen as the other, in not just an ethnic Jewy way, you know, we say, but in a deeply religious way. There's another comedian who works in a more distinctly Jewish settings. His name is Joel Chasnoff. Very funny guy, good author. He wrote a book about serving in the Israeli army that ironically is very funny and very serious at the same time. His humor is so insidery that he mostly plays synagogues, shuls, Hillels, JCCs. So I want to show a couple of clips of Joel to give you an idea of his very funny act, and also note the way this is not ethnic Judaism, this is religious Judaism, but it's still very funny. Gabe, if you want to run the next one.
I'm from.
No, that's yeah.
Yeah, I actually almost didn't make it here tonight. I flew here yesterday from New York, and I got stopped in the airport by the TSA security people. I don't know if anyone here has ever been stopped, but it's very embarrassing. Because I'm male and I was flying alone in New York, that makes them suspicious, so they stopped me and wanded me. Yeah, I actually almost didn't make it here tonight. I flew here yesterday from New York, and I got stopped in the airport by the TSA security people. I don't know if anyone here has ever been stopped, but it's very embarrassing. Because I'm male and I was flying alone in New York, that makes them suspicious, so they stopped me and wanded me, patted me down, they opened my bag, they took out my tefillin, and like, how do you even begin to explain tefillin to somebody who works for George W. Bush? Like, where does that conversation even start? How do you explain 8-foot-long leather straps to people who believe in moral values? Like, they asked me, do you use this in the bedroom? And I said, only if I can't find 9 other men. And that is not the answer you want to give. They were all upset. You mean mature men? I said, yeah, at least 13 years old.
All right, that's Joel Chasnoff. Let's do the next one too. You get it in a row.
I went to Jewish day school and I was on the basketball team. That was the highlight for me. My parents wanted me to learn Talmud and Torah, which I did, but for me the highlight was the sports. I was the starting center on our Jewish... It's my life story, what are you laughing at? The highlight of my athletic career, but it was so much pressure because when you go to a Jewish school and you're on the sports team, you're not just playing for your school, you are playing for the entire Jewish people. Right, and that's what it's like. When you're a Jew and you do something, you do it for all the Jews. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are on the sidelines rooting for you. And what made it worse is we were the only Jewish school in our neighborhood, so they stuck us in the Catholic League. They figured, well, you believe in God, they believe in God, how about you fight it out for yourselves? So it was no longer a game, it was about whose deity was right, you know? It was like the Old Testament versus the New Testament. It was Hashem versus the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, and that's unfair, that's 3-on-1, we can't take that defense. We had the cheerleaders. You do not know the meaning of the word sexy till you have seen a squad of Orthodox Jewish cheerleaders. Coming out at halftime, introducing themselves, the Hillel Lions say, hello from Rivka, Malkachaya, always that one immigrant girl from Russia, Svetlana, wearing denim skirts that come down to their ankles, wrapped up like blue jean fajitas. God forbid you should see some skin. Throw the girl up in the air. Oop, can't catch her. Shomer Nagia. Sorry about that.
All right. So again, that's Joel Chasnoff. You have to know some stuff. I mean, you don't have to. There is some stuff that's universal, but you have to know some stuff. You have to know what tefillin is. You have to know what a minyan is. You have to know what Shomer Nagia is. I think I even have to translate that for this audience. Shomer Nagia means, out of laws of modesty, a young couple cannot touch each other before they're married. This is not ethnic comedy of the early 20th century. This is very, very different kind of humor. So without further ado, and Gabe, I'm going to skip one video. I want to talk about everyone's purveyor of what I call insider Jewish humor, although Modi may disagree. He's a stand-up comedian. He's an actor. He performs a Jewish comedy around the world. I'll say this, and he'll correct me, but I know he studied cantorial music at Yeshiva University, and he continues to sing at the synagogue where he prays. He was a Wall Street banker before entering comedy. And I think he lives on the Lower East Side. And he can correct me on all these as soon as he gets on. But to give you a sense of what Modi does, that makes him very different right now in comedy and makes him extremely popular among a certain kind of somewhat well-informed Jewish audience. I wanted to show a clip from one of his recent gigs, or maybe not so recent, but I think it is. And then after that, we'll talk to Modi about himself, Jewish humor, and its future. So, you know, the one I'm talking about, Gabe?
Yep. Bear with me 1 second. It's going to take me to YouTube. Can you still see?
Yeah. Now
bear with the ad for a second. Okay.
Are we paid?
Got to know your audience. Sephardi? Where's Sephardi people? In the back. It's a big difference. There's a big difference. It's unbelievable the difference of Ashkenazi and Sephardi. I know we're one nation, Am Echad, and it's not. Ashkenazi Jews, we want to move things along fast. Get all of you right now, the Ashkenazi just thinking the babysitter, reliever, let's get the hell out of here. We heard 2 jokes, we're out of here. Right? You're done. Right? You're done. The Sephardic people, they could stay here till next Thursday. They have nowhere to go, no rush. They do everything so slow. They're in no rush. I have Sephardic buddies. I go to their house for Shabbat, mix hamotzi, the blessing on the bread, Hans. We bless it before we shove it in our face. Ashkenazi people, it's a 4-second event, right? Hamotzi lechem in the... It's a geschmack, it's got raisins, it's like a piece of cake. Sephardic make the blessing, it takes them exactly 4.5 hours. Poteach et yadecha. Umezbiya lekol hay rason. Baruch hagever hashebeto ham yodeh kol b'nei Adam. Adam bekol darko yodeh. Atalumos titreko haki beto Adam. A half hour. The Ashkenazi guys are fainting. Water. He keeps going Shabbat, Shabbat Kodesh, Shabbat Va'ina, Shabbat Himelizik Refuah Shlema Lekol Mahotenu. He's giving the challah a Mishaberach, which you're familiar with. The Ashkenazi guys got flies on their lips. He keeps going Aleinu ve'al Benenu ve'al Benehem ve'al Jazira ve'al Qaeda Wallak ve'al Beneh u'Beneh Beneh. And then they all yell Hayim! Hayim! They all are Hayim. That means life. Only they, do you guys, Sephardics in the back, do you know why you yell that? No. I'll tell you why. Because years ago, there was a big Sephardic rabbi named Chaim Baba Ganosh, or whatever the hell his name was. He was doing a 9-hour hamotzi, right? His wife's in the kitchen, everything's burning. She goes, Chaim! They go, Chaim! They schlep everything out, even the way they read the Torah, the the scroll. Ashkenazi people read the Torah in seconds. Seconds. We were starving. We could smell the cholent downstairs. We want to get the hell going. Next. Sephardic read the Torah in actual time. You can almost see Moses going down the mountain. Amen. Vayarad Moshe.
So good.
So without further ado, I want to bring on Modi to talk about his humor and others, and what I noticed in that clip is how you negotiate the people in the room who don't necessarily understand what a mishaberach is, and other stuff. So I just want to hear from you, Modi. Like, when you're, tell me a little about how you think about your audiences, which I know probably changed. That was the Comedy Cellar. That wasn't a synagogue. So welcome, and tell me how you think about what we talked about between the difference between Judaism, Yiddish, kite, and just humor, because humor is universal.
Am I on?
You are on. I'm
on. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for broadcasting from the Unabomber's hut. Where are you?
I'm in a cabin in the Berkshires.
You look like you are like a bear's gonna walk in behind you.
It has happened. So let's not.
It looks like the Unabomber's hut where they found him. It's so funny you played that clip. That's like from the beginning of that bit. I don't know if you've seen my special, Know Your Audience, which is exactly what you're talking about. Know your audience. You have to look at the audience and know. And if you see in my comedy special, I right away point out who's not Jewish in the audience, and I almost do the entire show to him. So when I'm doing a joke about a shiva, about a mishaber, I turn to him. The entire audience knows that he's a non-Jew. I pointed him out, and now I have a go-to to explain a joke, a shiva. So I say a shiva, and I say to him, awake. But we have bars right away, and then we do a whole thing on explaining it to I explain it to the Gentile in the audience. That's so funny that you played that bit. It's so old. It's the beginning of that. At the comedy special that I taped, Know Your Audience, that bit is refined. That's a very early version of that bit.
It gets even better. So
it got a lot better than that.
So when you're thinking about your comedy, well, first of all, do you feel that your comedy limits your success because it is an insider voice?
No, look, from what you're talking about, when people watch me who aren't Jewish, and we get a lot of them at the show, and not only that, they're bringing their Jewish friends, which is Mashiach energy. They are watching, for them to watch a show like I'm doing, it's a portal into the Jewish world. They get to sneak a peek into the Jewish world through laughter and pride. You have a comedian who's not apologizing for being Jewish. He's not embarrassed of being Jewish. I wasn't the bad basketball player. I wasn't the worst in the league in my high school. You're seeing a proud Jew being proud of being Jewish and all that, and they get to see that and they enjoy it. And of course, you have to know your audience. If you're doing a synagogue gig, where they know a little bit more, you can stretch it. If not, you have to explain it, but make it fun when you explain it.
So tell me a little about how you got into comedy. I know it wasn't your first career. You were a class clown. You were the life of the party, and realized you can
No,
get.
I was in investment banking, and we used to imitate the secretaries when I came home from my friends, and they said you should do stand up. Let's not talk about that. Talk about what you're talking about. So
Okay.
on what you're talking about, it's the owner of the Comedy Cellar, his wife Juanita, who's Puerto Rican. She went to go see John Leguizamo, and we were hanging out afterwards, and she says he's the best comedian in the world. He's the #1 comedian. John Leguizamo is hysterical. So Noam, the owner of the Comedy Cellar, explains to her, to you he is, because you're Puerto Rican. You understand his humor on another level because you grew up in a Puerto Rican home. You had the grandmother that did this and chicken with rice and whatever his jokes were. So when people who are Jewish watch my humor, they connect to it on another level than somebody who's not Jewish connects to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the person who's not Jewish still connects to it. When you're watching Chris Rock talk about being black in New York, in a rough neighborhood, you're listening to that, even though you didn't grow up in that. It's a portal into his world, and that's what good comedy is.
Right. So do you code switch? Do you have bits that you realize, wow, this audience, the Jewish stuff's going to die 1,000 deaths. I got to work up some more secular material. Or you say, no, I'm Modi. You know who I am, and this is, I represent this kind of humor.
All the humor can be done with a way that everybody can understand it. If you watch my comedy special, I go deep into a shiva, and I explain it to a person who's not Jewish in there. Obviously, if I'm doing a Omar Abai or Rab Chanina joke, something that Rabbi Abai, obviously it's not going to go there. But again, the title of my special was Know Your Audience. So, you have to know your audience and know what's going to kill and what's going to confuse them and how to make them not being confused funny.
Right. I like to think sometimes, I've heard others say this, that comedy is about the specifics. And the more the deeper you can go into the details, in some ways, the funnier the joke becomes. I don't know if and I think I see that in your act, because there are, you've pointed out specific differences between, say, Sephardi and Ashkenazim, how they say good Shabbos. I know that's a bit that people send to me all the time on stuff. And it's funny because I barely even noticed that until you aired it, right? You kind of elevated that to me. So and I think that's what a good comedian can do.
Right. That's chokhmah, which is knowledge. I think it's a loose term. Chokhmah is the koach of ma, the energy of what. Mm-hmm. So you get to you didn't realize it till I said it.
Right.
That's the koach of ma. That's chokhmah. Mm-hmm. So that's where comedy comes from.
Mm-hmm. Well, who are some of your comedy influences? Both, and I'm not even asking about Jewish, although they could be. I mean, when you study the craft, when you think about who makes you laugh and who you want to be like.
Obviously, there's Jackie Mason, who the lessons I learned from him was be true to your audience, and the rest will follow. Be true to your Jewish. You are a Jewish comedian. Be a Jewish comedian. The rest will follow. They'll catch on that this is funny, and they want to be a part of it and watch it. Other influences I had was Alan King, who I loved how proud he was and wasn't schleppy, and he was in a tuxedo and he was doing well and he was buying a house and his wife was in jewelry, and it was like a prouder Jewish voice, not this nebuchi attitude towards being Jewish. And his timing and cadence is I found completely helpful to me when I was learning comedy. I used to go to the Museum of Television and Film and watch his old clips. This was before YouTube, just to see his timing and cadence. And so those are two big influences on me. George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. These are all geniuses in comedy.
Right.
That-
I'm not
that-
hearing Woody Allen, so maybe that's when you're talking about the kind of the nebbishy, the neurotic version of Judaism. He embodies that sort of stuff.
Correct. Which is a thing. Which is look at Larry David. I mean, the whole world loves that show because it's showing that this Jewish guy negotiating over an extra egg on a sandwich. They love that. They can't get enough of that. That's all Jews to them. That's a Jew. A Jew tries to get an extra egg on his sandwich, so they're okay with that. It feeds into the stereotype, and it's funny. It's not my humor. It's not my. I'm much more proud. We're doing great. We're running when I toured all over Europe, I can't tell you, doing shows in Berlin, Düsseldorf, Frankfurt, Vienna. I call it the reparations tour, but it was just to be on stage yelling that you're a proud Jew. People are looking at you, that they're in shock. They're absolutely in shock. So
who's out there? Who do you admire today, Jewish and non-Jewish, in terms of comedy? Folks who are either working in the Jewish medium or are just funny people that you're happy to go see on your own when you go to a club.
I love Dave Attell. I don't know if you know him.
Dave Attell.
He's a comic that happens to be Jewish. He's not a Jewish comedian. Jewish comedians, you have Judy Gold, you have Ilan Gold, you have my opening act. I think you can consider him a Jewish comedian. Ilan Altman, very funny guys. There's a whole group of them in New York City, young ones that are all starting out, and they identify as being Jewish comedians. They have like a night that they do shows at. They're on Instagram and all that, but they're Jewish comedians. It's a big difference between a comedian who's Jewish. Big difference. Yeah.
Right. And when you
Jerry Seinfeld is a comedian who's Jewish.
Okay.
You understand? I'm a Jewish comedian. What?
Right. And that's because they're like we talked about earlier in the introduction, they're like getting into the stuff of being Jewish instead of just some of the stereotypes that everyone's or ignoring it altogether.
Or ignoring it altogether. He's just talking about his situation with his wife or his whatever he's dealing with as just a regular. He doesn't mention being Jewish with it. Whereas I flavored it all up with Judaism. So
one thing I want to point out, and I wrote about this because I was amazed. So you've been part with Ilan Gold of the Jewish comedy tour. What do you call it? I forgot what they're called.
We had a festival called the Chosen Comedy Festival.
The Chosen Comedy Festival. So I went there, I think it was 2 years ago in Coney Island when you first started.
Oh, is it? Yeah, okay.
It was astounding. For people who didn't go, it was at a amphitheater in Coney Island that sat 4,000 people. I think it was sold out.
Yeah.
Lining up and down the boardwalk. And I said, I'd never been in a Jewish space as diverse as that comedy festival. Not since I went to the last APAC convention. You had Ashkenazi Sephardim, you had modern Orthodox, you had the Russians from down the boardwalk. The
Chabad guys, we had the Chabad guys putting on tefillin on people. We had 18-year-olds to 88-year-olds. It was so diverse and so beautiful and so absolutely amazing. And it was complete Mashiach energy. And now we're busy touring on our own. It was very hard to get it together to do it again this year. We've been touring so much.
Right. You did a version in Los Angeles too, is that right?
And in Miami, yeah.
No, but really, I remember saying, you know what I thought of when I saw that? I thought of the Kings of Comedy, the Spike Lee movie with the four top Black comedians of the day, and there was an energy in that room of people, and this is about your comedy, which is people recognizing themselves on stage and each other in a way that they never had before. It felt like something very different than a comedy show. It felt almost like a pilgrimage holiday.
It does feel a little like sometimes I do mostly theaters, but once in a while we do synagogues where on a Monday or Wednesday night, we pack in 1,100 people. They open up the walls like it's for Yom Kippur, and you feel it. It's very, very special. People coming to a synagogue for a comedy show, and like not 300, it was about 1,100 people. The place is packed. The seats are all sold out. They raised a lot of money for the for the shul, for me. And there's an energy, there's a different type of energy when you're doing a synagogue gig.
Mhm.
It's a different, I love it. I love them. It's set up. I mean, there's the sound, there's lights. You're good to go. Yeah.
Right. A beam is basically a comedy stage, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and maybe Gabe, you can share them in a sec. But I wanted to ask one more question, which is, you got to talk about this. We're in very fraught times right now. There's a war in Israel. There's we're still living kind of the post-October 7th world. Are there places you can or don't want to go when you're on stage because it's a buzzkill or because
you mean topics? Topics.
Yeah.
So I was in Israel when the war broke out. I had a tour in Sukkot all over Israel, and then the war broke out Saturday, and we had a flight that day to Paris because we had 4 shows in Paris right after the war. The Monday after the Saturday, we had shows, and we realized we have to do it. People bought tickets. You can't let them win by canceling comedy shows, and I've been fully booked since the war began, and more shows that people really need to laugh. My next tour, the one that we're doing now, is called Pause for Laughter. It's very important to just while you're inhaling all of the news in Israel and seeing protests and getting all, you've got to just take a minute or an hour to just laugh. So my next show, the new tour now, is called Pause for Laughter. And I try not to bring the war up or anti-Semitism up in it, giving people an hour to just get it out of their head. And at the end, I put it all together with anti-Semitism and how great the Jews have been. And I've been singing Hatikva at the end of every show, which kind of like relieves any guilt they may have of, we just sat here and laughed.
Right.
On my podcast, I have a podcast called And Here's Modi. We had family of hostages on. And we were laughing with them. I got them to laugh. They were having a great time. And they were like, we haven't laughed in months. And they weren't sure how to feel about that. But you have to pause for laughter. It's so important.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever have a reaction, nothing to do with Israel, just someone who is offended by your take on Sephardim or Ashkenazi?
Very, very little. Compared to what's out there, videos that have 9 million, 12 million views, almost nothing. Once in a while, someone tries to just to stir the crap up for no reason. But otherwise, the Sephardic Ashkenazi stuff has unified people so much. How many emails and DMs we've gotten from couples who are mixed marriages, like Sephardic and Ashkenazi? They love it. They can't. It really unites. It shows how ridiculous the difference is. And so people, and anybody listening to this, the clip that they showed you was the beginning of that bit. You should watch the comedy special. It's on YouTube. It's called Know Your Audience. Not only that, make sure you help somebody who doesn't know how to watch on YouTube. So find a grandmother or grandfather or parents who don't know how to set it up. Set them up, watch it with them. That's Mashiach energy. And I have shows all over coming out on this Pause for Laughter tour. And it's all the tickets are available on modilive.com. And the best way to learn Jewish comedy besides your class is to actually see it. And I'm doing it.
Great. I just, I want to just give audience a chance. I know, Gabe, there are a couple of questions from the audience.
Sure. I will put those links here too. Were you saying, Modi, that your special is fully on YouTube?
Fully on YouTube or Amazon, whichever one you want. But what I'm saying is if you can watch it, your grandmother or grandfather don't know how to set up an iPad to watch
Absolutely.
it. Go set them up.
Absolutely.
Make sure that's
the generations together.
Yeah.
Not to stay too long on the October 7th thing, but I did get a bunch of direct private messages from people. Wondering, you mentioned that you're fully booked, but in other arts, the arts world, literary world, Jewish, just being Jewish or being proudly Jewish or being Israeli at this moment in time, having any kind of connection to that, is, proving to be a liability in some ways. There's cancellations, that all these is the comedy world feeling any of that? Because there's so many Jews in comedy. Do Jews in comedy right now feel
I don't know. None of my shows were canceled. But we have a lot of security at the shows, especially when we're in Europe. In Paris, we had literally a tank in front of the theater. We have undercover officers inside. We have extra security, and the shows have not been canceled. And I was in Israel. Comedians are thriving. They're really doing amazing stuff and performing and bringing lightness to the war as much as you can, which is a comedian's job. It's literally a comedian's job to bring happiness in a time of sadness. And so comedy, I don't know about the literary world or any of that other world. I don't read. So yeah.
Someone asked me if you ever do shows like in Israel, for instance, in Hebrew. And if
no, there's a lot of when I do perform in Israel, you can feel the crowd, and you can tell if it's mostly Israelis or mostly Anglos, like people who moved to Israel from America or from the UK, and they live there now. And the last thing they want to do is hear Hebrew. They want to hear English. They want to hear comedy in English. But we throw in the Jewish, Israeli and Israeli Hebrew into it, and but the show is in English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and most of the rest here are just praising you and your humor and what you've done for the Jewish. Yeah, but one other thing that I kind of can turn into a question. Someone brought up Jackie Mason and how like crude he was, and I feel like what is your take on like R-rated humor? Would it ever fit into your set, or does it like sort of clash with, I don't know, what you would say your level of religiosity is, but do you sort of like Jerry Seinfeld in a way, who never never curses or anything like that? Do you try to stay away from anything R-rated?
I don't curse on stage because I just don't. It's just opens you up to a much larger audience, and I think it's just an easier. For me, it's easier to not curse than to curse, and people my audience prefers it. And this way, you can also do events in a synagogue space, events in a religious space. I don't know. Did you say people say that Jackie Mason was crude?
Yeah.
Oh, I think towards the end he was, but when he was at his prime on his Broadway show, it was very clean. Yeah. So
he didn't work blue, as he used to say.
He didn't work blue, and he didn't use the S word and F word and any of those words. And if he did, it was already like in the show, and they were already, and it was so accented, it really accented the joke that he's all of a sudden dropping an S word or an F word. But I just don't, because my audience does not want that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Gabe, thanks.
That's all we got. Yeah.
So you got good.
So, and I saw there was just a lot of praise. There was just a lot of praise in the comments. If you didn't see it, I thought it was brilliant. People want you to do your bits right now. We're not going to make you do that.
No, definitely see the comedy special on YouTube. Know your audience, and tickets for shows that are near you, or find tickets near your friend. ModiLive.com, and I'm so proud and honored to be a part of this. And great topic, great topic. The differences between religion and. But it all boils down to know your audience. If you're going to do a Gemara joke, make sure you are in a room where they're going to get it, or be able to explain it in a way that's going to be funny. Right, thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks for being on. Thanks for the
so much for joining
tips.
us.
I'm going to work on that.
Thank you. Bye.
Right. And folks, you can stick in. We have a little bit more to go. It's funny. Thank you to Modi, who's again hilarious and thoughtful, as you all saw. It's just that the fact that he called his special "Know Your Audience" is almost could be a title of this course. So he set us up beautifully for the last few minutes we have together, because you could hear he wasn't a great fan of Larry David's humor. And Larry David represents really a different universe from Modi, because his sensibility is very secular. I think Larry understands the difference between where he is secular and where he is religiously. So I think in the last few minutes, what I'd love to do is I want to show a couple of clips from Larry David, and we'll show one first, and then we can discuss it a bit, and then think about the comparisons between how Larry David makes humor and how someone like Modi. Modi had a great distinction. He talked about a Jewish comedian and a comedian who's Jewish. Modi considered himself the former, Larry David the latter. So let's take a look at a clip from Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry's hit HBO show that recently concluded after about a 22-year run, which was pretty amazing.
It's so beautiful,
so romantic.
Too. Yeah, listen to this.
It's pretty.
Excuse me. Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish?
You want to check my penis?
Okay.
Huh? Is that what you want to do?
My real question is,
Yeah,
what
what
were
is
you
your real
whistling?
question?
Yeah, what were you whistling?
Hello, Dolly?
No, it was Wagner.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
You,
it's a
sir,
major-
were $100.
I want to know what a Jew is whistling Wagner
Do you
for,
wanna
when he was
know?
one of the great anti-Semites of the world. You know what you are?
What am I?
You're a self-loathing Jew.
Am I?
Oh,
Well,
yes,
let me tell you
yes,
something.
yes, yes.
Jewish. I do hate myself,
Yeah.
but it has nothing to do with being Jewish, okay?
No, it doesn't have anything
No,
to
it
do with
doesn't,
Jews.
yeah.
As millions of Jews
right.
were taken to the concentration camps
Okay.
with Wagner being played in the background.
You know-
Yes, Hitler's favorite composer.
Really?
Yes.
You know what? They got a mental asylum a couple of blocks
not a
down.
mental
I
assignment.
suggest,
No.
I suggest
Where's
you go
your heritage?
and check yourself
Where's your
in.
Judaism? Millions
Judaism,
of years.
where are you?
should have learned
Where are you,
Instead, you
Judaism?
have this attitude
Oh.
that you're better.
Yeah, they should put a
What is
muzzle on you.
this?
You're foaming at the mouth.
No.
Right, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, this is something you need.
All right. So that was if you're one of the few people on planet Earth who don't know the show, this is what Larry does. He gets to uncomfortable situations and then more discomfort ensues. Again, this is something new, and I have never seen anyone joke about this before now. You do have to have a little insider knowledge, but not too much. The Wagner debate is a real thing. The Israeli Philharmonic, I don't know if they, for years, would not play Wagner because it was Hitler's favorite composer. I don't know if they lifted the ban, but it's a real thing in Jewish life. It's also this clip, I think it's a dispute between two kinds of Jews. And Larry David knows the difference. So his antagonist puts his Jewish identity first, and he expects others to do so also, right? And if you don't, you're that word that gets tossed around, you're a self-hating Jew. There are certain attitudes that make you Jewish, and if you don't accept them, and Larry has that great line, I do hate myself, but it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm Jewish. Larry represents the universal, the less parochial Jew, right? Who's a person of the world. You know, he'll eat Wagner just the way he'll eat a ham sandwich, right? You don't limit yourself. Larry takes beauty where he sees it. He whistles quite nicely, I thought, the Wagner tune. The man says, your Jewish identity means you have to divide up the world between what's kosher, right, and what's not. It's a very Jewish sensibility. Even though in this case it has some ethnic overtones of like, if you're loyal to the Jewish people, forget religion, you do not sing Wagner. Where Larry divides people, and you saw that Modi had some qualms, is they like the, if you like the humor of discomfort, Curb is a show for you. I don't see Larry as neurotic as much as I see him as highly moral, and he always feels he has to be right. And unfortunately, a lot of us feel that, but unfortunately, we don't say the things out loud that he says. So that's always my take on it. It's not that he's neurotic, it's that he's moral to a fault. There's a right way to taste ice cream at an ice cream bar, and there's a wrong way. And he's going to let you know if you do the wrong way. So let's look at another clip from Larry David, which looks at some of these same kind of dichotomies. Larry, in this, I'm going to set up the episode that's coming up next. Larry realizes he might be able, his friend Richard Lewis is ill, the late, great Richard Lewis, his best friend since their days in summer camp. Richard Lewis needs a kidney. And Larry realizes if he pretends to be much more steeped in Judaism, than he actually is, he can get the kidney because the head of the kidney consortium is an Orthodox Jew. And there's actually some truth behind this, that there are Jewish networks of organ donors, because the idea is that you can get a better genetic match within a small ethnic group. They actually exist. Anyway, the head of the Organ Donor Association is an Orthodox Jew. Larry wants to get on his good side by pretending to be just like him. Let's take a look at the clip.
Mr. Heinemann.
How are you, sir?
What a great pleasure to meet you.
Well, it's nice to meet you. Sit down, please.
Thank you.
So?
I'm sorry, I'm a little late, you know.
Allah bechalem. It's not a big problem.
Yeah.
Was machst du? What a mitzvah it was for you to leave that note on my car.
Well, how could I do anything less than that? I'd have to be a sociopath to hit somebody's car and then go away into the night as if nothing happened.
Thank you. Thank you.
What happened? I was listening to Jewish radio and they were talking about Israel, and I got so worked up I lost control of my car.
May I offer you some lunch?
Please.
Morty, menus, please. It's kosher, you know that.
Oh, let's see, wait a second. Hello? No. Thank you for that invitation, but I cannot go to the baseball game on the Sabbath. I'm sorry. It's impossible. I'll take a rain check, however. Oh, okay. I'd love to go to the game, but not on the Sabbath. The Yankees are playing, and I would kill to go down there.
You're a Yankee fan.
Oh, I'm a Yankee fan. I'm a huge Yankee fan.
I love the Yankees.
You love the Yankees?
There are so many times when the Yankees were playing in Anaheim that I have so much wanted to go to see it. I even cheat by watching it on television. I shouldn't do that. There are two things in my life that I love, besides family and my work. I love baseball, especially the Yankees. I love to ski.
My yarmulke almost fell off. I'm so taken aback.
What?
Skiing? You said skiing.
Yeah, well, I'm not good, but
I'm not so good myself, but I love it.
You love it?
Oh, it's my favorite thing to do in life.
Isn't that a wonderful coincidence?
I have a little ski lodge.
Really?
Yes, I would love to invite you to go skiing.
My goodness, what a wonderful gesture.
Excuse me?
Okay. So there you have it, Larry David trying to pretend to be an Orthodox or religious Jew. A little sidebar here is that something called bageling. I don't know if you know what bageling is. Bageling is when you're with someone. This is a little bit different than this situation, but it's similar. You're with someone, you're not sure if they're Jewish, you don't want to come out and ask it, so you start dropping little hints to see if they kind of associate. So if you're sitting next to someone on the airplane and you say something like, where are you going for the holidays? And if the guy talks about Easter, okay, he's not Jewish, but he talks about, going to his in-laws for Passover, you're in. And that's called bageling. You drop a little Yiddish. Larry's kind of over bageling because the guy's using Yiddish. Larry doesn't know a word, so he just makes sounds, and he figures that's Yiddish. It kind of works with the guy, but his daughter, who's much more difficult and much more skeptical, sees right through Larry, and she knows he's not a religious Jew. There's also in this a little bit about I want to be a Cohen joke, going back to the beginning, which is Larry's the assimilated Jew here who's coming off badly, right? He's the one who's been trying to manipulate this nice man into thinking he's more Jewish than he is. He wears the yarmulke. If you look around that deli, there are more yarmulkes than you'll ever see in a Jewish deli. And they all happen to be black velvet ones, which is a little weird because probably in Los Angeles kosher deli, they'd be knitted, if you know the difference. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today, which is like, where does Larry fit in? Larry's kind of a throwback to some of the ethnic humor that we talked about in the beginning, but he has new things to joke about. He's aware of what's going on in the Jewish world. He had the famous Palestinian chicken episodes where it was kind of a parody and a working through the Middle East conflict. He had the famous Survivor episode where he was kind of airing the kind of questions that people were asking in the comments before about, can you joke about the Holocaust? Can you be, and I think they can be very smart, and even while they're being uncomfortable. And that's the notion. That's the whole game that Larry David played through, so many seasons of Curb Your Enthusiasm. So that's what we do with Jewish humor. We look at it, we break it down, we ask ourselves, what's happening here? Who's the winner in the joke? Who's the loser? Who's the target? Why do we tell these things? I love you to, when you leave the class tonight, to go home and think about. When you hear a Jewish joke, one thing I always ask is like, what's behind that joke? Why are we telling jokes about this topic? What anxiety do we have as a Jewish people? In the case of Larry David here, his anxiety is that some Jews think they're better or more Jewish than others. He wants to work through that in a comedic way. When Modi's on stage, you see a lot less. His problem, it's less problematic, and it's more about Jewish pride, right? He's coming to it as, I want to create a atmosphere in which people look favorably on me and my Jewish persona. So he's trying to solve I think what he described as kind of the anxiety that Jews are nebbishes, right? That they're not proud of being Jewish. They're embarrassed to be Jewish. His challenge is and that he set for himself, is expressing Jewish pride. Every joke has that built in, not just Jewish jokes. There's something that's making the joke teller nervous, and he or she is trying to dispel it, right? When you tell a joke about, my father was a Cohen, my grandfather was a Cohen, the community is nervous that people are losing basic Jewish knowledge. So they tell jokes about Jews who are ignorant of Jewish ritual, text, religiosity. The Hebrew word for that is an am haaretz, a person of the earth, which is not a good thing. You want to be a person of the Beit Midrash, the library. So I want to close by saying Jewish comedy has always reinforced the identity of the Jewish people in the face of tragedy, in the face of triumph. They've, as Modi talked about, in the face of very, very recent tragedy that we're still dealing with. They've learned the power of laughter to reinforce the things they have in common. The great lesson of Jewish comedy, and we talk about this in our course, is that what makes us laugh makes us stronger. So thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Modi, and I'll throw it back to Gabe.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was amazing. I just want to emphasize that in the course, Andy gets, this is really just a taste, like he said, he gets way deeper into many of the things he talks about, and talks about a lot more topics. So if you did enjoy this, you really would enjoy the full course. And like I mentioned, I will, tomorrow you'll get an email with the link to the course again, with the video recording from tonight, probably a link to Modi's stand-up special again, if anyone missed it, and anything else, other resources, things like that, things to keep in mind. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and thanks again, Andy, for putting this together and putting the course together, and making so many people think in new ways about Jewish jokes.
Happy to do it. Thanks everyone.
Thanks for the amazing
contractor now and start working on this cabin, because if Modi doesn't think my cabin is nice, then something's got to change.
He turned it on right away.
Yeah,
All right, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.